Jaren Wolf stood in the observation gallery of Convergence Point, watching ships from a dozen different species drift through the controlled chaos of the station's traffic lanes. At 28, he was among the youngest diplomats the Terran embassy had ever stationed on the massive neutral hub that served as the galaxy's crossroads. His reflection in the transparent aluminum showed a lean man with unruly brown hair and tired green eyes that had seen too many tedious negotiations over trade routes and mineral rights. "Message for you," Jaren called his assistant, Marcus, from across the gallery. "The Keltheran delegation is requesting a meeting. Priority channel." Jaren sighed, running a hand through his hair. The Keltheran Empire had been circling the humans like sharks since first contact 3 years ago. They were an old civilization, graceful and refined, who viewed humanity's rapid expansion into space as the flailing of children playing with dangerous toys. Every interaction was layered with subtle condescension. Every meeting a test. "Tell them I'll be in conference room 7 in 20 minutes, Jaren replied, already mentally preparing for whatever game they had planned this time. The conference room was one of the smaller ones, decorated in the neutral grays and blues that most species found calming. Jaren arrived to find 3 Keltheran already seated, their silver skin catching the light in ways that made them seem almost luminescent. They were tall, even-seated, with elegant proportions and large eyes that shifted between violet and deep blue, depending on the angle. "Diplomat Wolf," the lead Keltheran said, rising gracefully. His name was Vorinth, and he served as the Empire's primary representative to Convergence Point. "Thank you for meeting with us on such short notice." "Always a pleasure, Ambassador Vorinth," Jaren replied, taking his seat across from them. "What can the Terran embassy do for the Keltheran Empire today?" Vorinth's lips curved into what might have been a smile, but felt more like a predator baring its teeth. "We come bearing a gift, Diplomat Wolf, a gesture of goodwill between our peoples." That set off every alarm in Jaren's diplomatic training. The Keltheran didn't give gifts. They made calculated moves disguised as generosity. "How thoughtful," he said carefully. "What manner of gift?" "A cultural ambassador," another Keltheran said, a female named Thesha. "One who can help bridge the gap between our civilizations through direct immersion in human society." Before Jaren could respond, the door to the conference room opened, and she walked in. Jaren felt his breath catch despite himself. She was unmistakably Keltheran silver skin, tall frame, those shifting violet blue eyes, but there was something different about her. Her hair wasn't the usual white blonde of her people, but a deeper silver, almost pewter, that fell in waves past her shoulders. She wore a simple dress in deep blue that seemed to shimmer as she moved, and when her eyes met his, he saw something the other Keltheran never showed: genuine curiosity rather than veiled contempt. "This is Sivith of House Merith," Vorinth announced. "She has volunteered to serve as a cultural liaison, living among your people to better understand human ways. We thought perhaps she could begin her assignment with you, Diplomat Wolf, given your position and influence." The trap was obvious now. They expected him to refuse a human living in close quarters with a Keltheran woman would be scandalous to both species, fodder for jokes and political embarrassment. Or if he accepted, they expected him to bungle the situation, proving human incompetence at managing delicate cultural matters. Jaren looked at Sivith again. She met his gaze directly, something no Keltheran had ever done in his presence. In that moment, he made a choice that would change everything. The Terran embassy would be honored to host Sivith, he said smoothly, rising from his seat. "Cultural exchange is the foundation of lasting peace. I'll personally ensure she has everything she needs to understand human society." The disappointment that flashed across Vorinth's face was deeply satisfying. "Excellent," the ambassador said, recovering quickly. "We'll have her belongings sent to your residential quarters. Sivith, remember that you represent the Empire. Make us proud. Of course, Ambassador, Sivith replied, her voice melodic, but with an undercurrent that suggested layers. Jaren hadn't expected Dot after the Keltheron delegation departed. Jaren and Sivith stood alone in the conference room. The silence stretched between them, charged with unspoken questions. I should apologize, Jaren finally said. This isn't the assignment you expected, I imagine. Sivith tilted her head, studying him with those remarkable eyes. What makes you think you know what I expected? The Keltheron Empire sent you here to embarrass me, he said bluntly. To create a situation so awkward that either I'd refuse and insult your people, or accept and become a laughingstock. You're the punchline to a joke I haven't heard yet. To his surprise, Sivith laughed a genuine musical sound. You're more perceptive than they gave you credit for. But you're wrong about one thing. What's that? I volunteered, she said, moving closer. Jaren caught a scent like rain on stone, subtle and clean. I'm a xenolinguist, Jaren Wolf. I study languages and the cultures that create them. Your species has developed more linguistic variations in 300 years of space, travel than most civilizations do in 3,000. You're fascinating. So you're here to study me? He asked, finding himself intrigued despite the strange circumstances. I'm here to study humans, she corrected. But yes, starting with you. Unless you object to being observed by an alien scientist who your people probably consider a joke. Jaren found himself smiling. I've been called worse things than interesting. Come on, I'll show you to your quarters. Or rather, our quarters, I suppose. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jaren couldn't help but notice how people stared humans and aliens alike. A Keltheran and a human walking together as equals. Not in formal diplomatic capacity, but casually, as if they might actually be friends or something more, was unprecedented. Tell me something, Sivith said as they rode the lift to the residential levels. When Vorinth presented me, what did you really think? Jaren considered lying, then decided honesty might be more interesting. I thought you were beautiful. And then I thought that was exactly what they wanted me to think, that I'd be so distracted by how you look that I'd make a fool of myself. And now? Now I think you might be more dangerous than they intended, he said with a slight smile. Intelligence is always more dangerous than beauty. Sivith's eyes shifted to a deeper violet, and Jaren would later learn this indicated pleasure. I think we're going to get along, Jaren Wolf. His quarters were modest, but comfortable, a living area, small kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom. Station housing wasn't luxurious, but it was functional. Sivith's belongings had already been delivered. A surprisingly small collection of cases stacked near the door. You travel light, Jaren observed. Most of what I need is in here, she said, tapping her temple. Languages, cultural data, behavioral patterns. The rest is just clothing and research equipment. Research equipment? She pulled a small device from one of the cases, no larger than her palm. A biological scanner. Keltheran physiology can be affected by different environments, different species proximity. I like to monitor my body's responses. Something in her tone made Jaren think there was more to it than simple health monitoring, but he didn't push. They'd just met after all, even if they were expected to live together. I'll take the couch, he offered. You should have the bedroom. Sivith turned to him, her expression unreadable. Jaren, if we're going to make this work, if I'm going to truly understand humans, and you're going to survive having a Keltheran roommate, we need to be honest with each other. Can we agree to that? Honesty, he said, extending his hand in a human gesture. I can work with that. She looked at his outstretched hand, then carefully took it. Her skin was cooler than his, smooth and strange. But the contact sent an unexpected warmth through him, a connection he hadn't anticipated. Then honestly, Sivith said, still holding his hand, I should tell you that the Keltheron Council believes our species are incompatible in every significant way. They sent me here believing nothing could possibly develop between us. They're wrong." Her eyes met his again, and Jaren felt his world shift on its axis. "Show me how humans eat dinner," Sivith continued, releasing his hand. "And tell me about Earth. I want to understand where you come from." As Jaren began preparing a simple meal, explaining human cooking and culture, he realized the Keltharan had miscalculated badly. They'd sent Sivith as a joke, expecting embarrassment and failure. They hadn't counted on connection. The first week of living together had been an adjustment for both of them. Jaren learned that Sivith preferred cooler temperatures, that she meditated for an hour each dawn in perfect stillness, and that she had an insatiable curiosity about everything human, from the way he made coffee to the idioms he used without thinking. Sivith learned that Jaren talked in his sleep, that he had a weakness for old Earth music, and that beneath his diplomatic polish was a man who genuinely cared about building bridges between species. Even when those species treated him with contempt, they fell into an easy rhythm. Mornings began with her meditation while he exercised. They'd share breakfast. She developed a taste for fruit and grain combinations and discussed their plans for the day. Evenings were spent in the living area, him working on diplomatic briefs while she cataloged linguistic patterns, occasionally asking him questions about human speech that he'd never considered before. Why do humans say head over heels when falling in love? She asked one evening, curled up on the opposite end of the couch. Isn't your head always over your heels? Jaren looked up from his tablet, smiling. It's supposed to be heels over head, actually. It got switched around over time. It means you're so dizzy with emotion that you're upside down, disoriented. Ah, Sivith said, making a note on her own device. So humans associate love with loss of equilibrium. That's consistent with other romantic idioms I've documented. Falling in love, being swept off your feet, losing your head. What do Keltharan say? She paused, considering. We don't have many romantic idioms. Keltharan relationships are typically arranged for genetic compatibility and social advantage. We say a couple is properly aligned or well-matched. That sounds incredibly unromantic, Jaren observed. It's practical, Sivith replied. But something in her tone suggested she didn't entirely agree with the practice. Emotions are considered unreliable guides for important decisions. And yet you're here, studying a species known for being emotional. Her eyes shifted to that deeper violet he'd learned indicated pleasure or interest. Perhaps that's exactly why I'm here. The moment hung between them, charged with something neither wanted to name yet. Jaren returned to his work, but his concentration was broken. It was Sivith who broke the pattern first, 2 weeks into her stay. Jaren came home from a particularly frustrating negotiation with a Centauri trade delegation to find her in the kitchen, attempting to cook. What's all this? He asked, surprised. I've been observing human food preparation, she said, stirring something in a pan that smelled surprisingly good. I wanted to try. You're always cooking for me. I thought I should reciprocate. Jaren moved closer, peering at the dish. Is that stir-fry? I watched several instructional videos and asked Marcus for advice. He's very enthusiastic about cooking. Marcus would teach a rock to cook if it showed interest, Jaren said with a laugh. This looks good, Sivith. They ate together at the small table, and Jaren was impressed by her effort. The flavors were slightly off. She'd used Keltharan spices she'd brought with her, creating something familiar yet exotic, but it was thoughtful. Thank you, he said sincerely. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to, she replied. Jaren, these past 2 weeks, I've learned more about humans than I did in years of academic study. But I've also, she hesitated, unusual for her, I've enjoyed your company. as more than just research. His heart rate increased, and he wondered if her biological scanner could detect it from across the table. "I've enjoyed your company, too. You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone cold, detached, superior." He met her gaze. "You're none of those things." Sivith stood, moving around the table toward him. "The Keltheran Council believes your species is primitive, driven by base emotions and fleeting passions. They sent me here expecting me to document your shortcomings." She stopped beside his chair, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns in her silver skin, like watermarks on fine paper. "But I've found something else entirely." Jaren stood as well, now face to face with her. "What have you found?" "That maybe emotions aren't weaknesses," she said softly. "That maybe there's wisdom in following your heart over your head sometimes." Her hand reached out, fingers brushing his cheek. "That maybe I understand now what head over heels really means." When their lips met, it was tentative at first, an exploration across species, across cultures, across everything they'd been taught about what was possible. Her lips were cooler than his, but they warmed quickly. The kiss deepened, and Jaren felt something shift in his chest. A door opening to possibilities he'd never imagined. They moved to the bedroom together, shedding not just clothes, but the expectations of their respective peoples. In the privacy of their shared space, cultural exchange became something profound and intimate. Jaren discovered that Keltheran's skin was incredibly sensitive. That touch was so rare in her culture that every caress felt magnified. Sivith learned that humans expressed emotion through physical connection in ways that transcended language. When they lay together, afterward, her silver skin gleaming against his tan in the dim light, Jaren traced patterns on her shoulder. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Sivith was silent for a moment. "Now I need to tell you something. Something the Council doesn't know, or rather, something they dismissed as impossible." She rose, retrieving her biological scanner from the living area. When she returned, she sat cross-legged on the bed, running the device over herself as he watched. "Keltheran physiology is highly adaptive," she explained. "It's how we survived on a world with extreme climate shifts. Our bodies can adjust to different environments rapidly. But the Council believes there are limits, that some biological bridges can't be crossed." "Bridges like what?" Jaren asked, though he was beginning to understand. "Like reproductive compatibility with other species." She showed him the scanner's display, though the Keltheran script meant nothing to him. "I've been monitoring my body since I arrived. Since we first touched, even that handshake, my physiology has been changing. Adapting." "Adapting to what?" "To you," she said, her eyes meeting his. "My body is making itself compatible with yours. It's rewriting its own biological code in ways that shouldn't be possible, according to every scientific study the Empire has conducted." Jaren sat up, his mind racing. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that what we just did could have consequences that will change everything between our species." Sivith interrupted. "And I need you to understand that I chose this knowingly. This wasn't just research or curiosity, Jaren. This was me wanting you." He pulled her close, feeling the coolness of her skin against his warmth. "The Keltheran sent you as a joke. What are they going to think if they find out about this?" "That their joke has become something they never anticipated," she said, settling into his embrace. "Something that proves humans aren't inferior or incompatible, just different. And maybe better in some ways." They spent the night talking, sharing fears and hopes about what their relationship might mean. Sivith explained more about Keltheran biology, how their adaptive nature was both a strength and a carefully guarded secret. Jaren told her about human history, about how his species had overcome prejudice and division within their own ranks, though slowly and painfully. "We're not perfect," he admitted. "Humans have made terrible mistakes. But we keep trying to do better." That's what makes you remarkable, Sivith said, her fingers intertwined with his. Not perfection, but the persistent attempt to achieve it despite failure. The following days were a careful dance of maintaining appearances while their relationship deepened in private. In public, he remained professional, the human diplomat, and his Keltheron cultural liaison. But behind closed doors, they explored what it meant to build something genuine across the vast divide of species and culture. Sivith continued her research, but now it was colored by personal experience. She documented not just human behavior, but human emotion. The way Jaren's eyes crinkled when he laughed, the warmth in his voice when he spoke about Earth, the gentle way he touched her as if she were precious. Jaren found himself seeing the station differently through her eyes. She pointed out details he'd stopped noticing, the way different species clustered in the corridors, the subtle hierarchies in dining areas, the complex dance of diplomacy that happened in every interaction. 3 weeks into her stay, Sivith woke before dawn with a wave of nausea that sent her rushing to the bathroom. Jaren found her there, pale as silver skin could be, and shaking. "What's wrong?" he asked, genuine fear in his voice. She looked up at him, her scanner clutched in one hand. "I need to run a full biological analysis. Help me back to the bedroom." He supported her weight as they returned to bed, and she ran the scanner over her entire body with shaking hands. The device chirped softly, displaying data in scrolling Keltheron script. Sivith's eyes widened as she read, her hand going to her abdomen. "Sivith?" Jaren's voice was tight with worry. "What is it?" She turned to him, her expression a mixture of wonder and terror. It worked. The adaptation worked completely. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "Jaren, I'm pregnant. We're going to have a child." The room seemed to tilt. Jaren stared at her, at their joined hands on her stomach, trying to process what she'd just said. That's impossible," he breathed. "You said it might be theoretically possible, but I know what I said," Sivith interrupted, her voice trembling. "But the scanner doesn't lie. There's a new life growing inside me. Half Keltheron, half human. Something that shouldn't exist, according to every scientific principle my people hold." Jaren pulled her into his arms, feeling her cool tears against his neck. "Hey, it's okay. We'll figure this out, will we?" she asked, pulling back to look at him. "Jaren, if the council finds out, they'll take me back immediately. This would be... I don't even know what this would be. A scandal? A miracle? Evidence that everything they believe about human inferiority is wrong? Maybe all three," he said, wiping her tears with his thumb. "But right now, the only question that matters is, what do you want?" Sivith looked at him with those remarkable violet blue eyes, and he saw the answer before she spoke it. "I want this child. I want you. I want a future that the council never planned for me." "Then that's what we'll fight for," Jaren said firmly. Together. As the artificial dawn began to brighten their quarters, they held each other, two people from different worlds who had created something entirely new. Outside their door, the station continued its endless dance of diplomacy and trade. Unaware that everything was about to change, that the joke the Keltheron Empire had played was becoming something far more significant than they'd ever imagined. And when the truth finally came out, the laughter would die in their throats, replaced by the realization that they'd underestimated humanity and love completely.